Response versus Stimulus Generalization by Molly Fugit. We found response versus stimulus generalization to be a confusing topic, so I have two friends who are going to help us learn more about it. To fully understand response generalization, we must first define response. A response is any instance of behavior with a clear ending and clear beginning. What about response class? Response class is a group of different responses which all serve the same function. An example of a response is when a teacher asks a question and then the student raises their hand to answer. That is their response. Then the student is called on to speak, which is the consequence. An example of response class is saying hi, waving, or tapping on the shoulder. These are all ways to get attention even though they look different. Now that we understand response, it's time to talk about response generalization. Response generalization, as stated in Cooper, is helpful forms of the target behavior start to occur even though no teaching or reinforcement has been directly used. An example of response generalization is when a child is learning how to appropriately ask for help using the phrase, "Help me please." Then response generalization occurs and a child begins saying, "Can you help me please?" signing help with ASL or saying, "I need help." All responses weren't taught directly, but all serve the same function, to ask for help. A non-example would be when a child is learning how to ask for help using the phrase, "Help me please." The child only uses the phrase, "Help me please," to ask for help. No response generalization has occurred because the child is only using the same phrase they were taught. Now let's move on to stimulus. What is a stimulus? A stimulus is anything in your environment that can have an effect on your behavior. What about stimulus class? Stimulus class refers to any group of stimuli sharing a predetermined set of common elements in one or more of these dimensions. An example of a stimulus is when a doorbell rings, a phone vibrates, or a friend waves to you. An example of a stimulus class is a red light, a stop sign, saying stop, all different stimuli, but they all have the same effect. Stimulus generalization. Stimulus generalization is when the stimulus control of a behavior is broader, that is, when the behavior occurs in a range of antecedent situations. An example of stimulus generalization is when a child learns to label a tennis shoe on a flashcard by saying shoe. Then stimulus generalization happens. Child labels a high heel on a flashcard, a flip-flop in real life, and a boot in a book, all by saying shoe. A child responds the same way to different stimuli. A non-example of stimulus generalization is when a child learns to label a tennis shoe on a flashcard by saying shoe, then a child sees a flip-flop and says no, sees a boot and says cowboy, sees a shoe in real life and does not respond. No stimulus generalization has occurred because the child can only correctly label the specific shoe they were taught to identify on the flashcard. This Venn diagram illustrates the differences and similarities between response and stimulus generalization. On the response side, you see different responses but the same context. On the stimulus side, you see same response to different stimuli. In the middle, which is their similarities, you see they're both types of generalization, they both involve behavior change, and they both happen after learning. This concludes my presentation on stimulus and response generalization. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned a lot.
Created using Powtoon.